I'm gonna record this. First of all, thanks for taking the time, and right off the bat, tell me about Kristen.
Tell you about Kristen?
Yeah, what was she like? It's been a long time. People didn't have the pleasure of knowing her like you did.
Well, Kristen was the kind that she was always doing things for everybody. Everybody loved her. She'd, if kids were getting teased, she'd stick up for them. She was always very giving, very kind. And every teacher, everybody who had her, they all said what a lovely girl she was. And she and I got along really good. We rarely had a disagreement. We shopped, we baked, we did all kinds of things together as a mother and daughter. I miss her.
Certainly in her photo, she was absolutely lovely too, wasn't she?
Yeah, she never knew she was pretty. Never.
Really?
Ever. I mean, she was the kind that we'd get all dressed up for church, okay, and we'd all as a family. And she'd come downstairs and she'd have this nice, pretty little outfit on. And she'd turn around and she had on the pair of shoes that the whole heels were right worn down to the ground. Kristen, you have to, oh, Mom. Nobody will notice that.
Yeah.
And, but that was her. She didn't care. So she just, I kind of wonder, and I really think that she tried to fix Jim Vermeesh. And that was what was in her mind, that he maybe was doing things that probably he shouldn't be doing, and she would counsel him. The kids at college always said when she was murdered, they came to the house, all these boys, and they said, their dorm was a floor above, and always they would come down whenever they had a problem with their girlfriends or this or that. Kristen would help counsel us. I mean, she was just, our rock. So, that was they all just couldn't believe that anybody would kill Kristen. Anybody that ever knew her would never kill her.
What do you think she was trying to fix? Was that part of the attraction for why she made the trip to Ovid, or was it simpler than that?
I think part of it, yes. Because I remember her telling me, she said, Mom, I think he's smoking marijuana, and I've been talking to him about not doing that. Mm-hmm. And, so I think she wanted to help fix him. And, what else he was mixed up in, from down in Florida and coming back, all these kids came back with a lot of money. Then we found out over the years that there were a lot of drugs going back and forth from Florida to the Finger Lakes up into the Ovid area. I've had so many people that have helped me along the way, an ex-principal of a high school who he's got more documentation and interviews than the police have. And he's just dedicated his life to trying to help solve Kristen's case. An ex-superintendent of the New York police, also the same thing. He got involved, and he's
Preston Felton.
Gone out. Pardon?
Preston Felton.
Right.
Yeah.
And Preston has been a dear. I mean, he has dedicated a lot of his time, never charged me, said he never would. He wanted to make things right. That we can solve Kristen's case. And, then a security guard from a prison Bill, who also was involved heavily. They drive up there, upstate New York. They would go out and interview all these people. They would, and they'd find out all these things. And we, would share this with state police, except most of the time they never did a thing about it. And every time I'd say, well, you need to go down and you need to go back to the beginning. You need to interview these kids. Their stories from day one didn't match. And, I'm reading back my private investigator that we had, all their stories on the case were just, each one of them had a different time. Each one had a different story as to how Jim Vermeesh went to pick up pizza and what he picked it up in. So all these things, and then, we bring this up.
And was he, just to jump into, was he picking up pizza when Kristen went for her walk? Is that the timeline?
Well, some say, no, nobody had the right story. That was the problem. He went before she went for her walk. Then others said, no, he went after her walk. She went for her walk. So there's a lot of discrepancies in this.
Did she call you on, did she call you on the phone too, while she went out for her walk? Did she call you?
She called me the day she got there. She called me again, telling me that she was leaving. She was coming home. She's going back to Mary's Holland's and then come home. And, so I said, and she was real hesitant. I said, is anything wrong? Aren't you having a good time? No, no. She wouldn't tell me. She, it's all right, Mom. And I really should have pressed her more. I really regret that I didn't press her more, because, there was something wasn't right. Something was wrong. So, and that was the night that obviously she was murdered.
First of all, there's no way you could have known possibly what was going to happen. Yourself, you're acting, as you said, you had a good relationship with your daughter. You were in communication with her even once she's on this trip, which certainly a lot of college age kids aren't with their parents when they're off doing something fun like that. Do you think that this is still a solvable puzzle though?
Yes, I do. I think there are people up there that actually know what happened. They're afraid in that area to come forward. So many people in that area end up all of a sudden committing suicide, or, or they, are dead, So it's just, I believe that people are scared, and people are scared to come forward. It's kind of a lawless area up there, really. They've got to rely on state police, or they rely on the sheriff, and they're not all good. And
what about what do you think? You like you said, you've been re-rating your private investigators' reports. You have others continuing to work on the case. Do you have a sense of what you think happened to her that night?
Well, I would go back and forth. I had probably 3 theories. Number one of them, I think it goes back to Florida. Either something happened, or they thought she knew something, or something happened when she was vacationing there. And I think, she could have been lured up to New York. There's always been this, we found out that 2 weeks, maybe 2 to 3 weeks before she went on this trip, she would go to this, where the kids dance and hang out over here in Burnsville. And she went there, and she meets a guy, and she comes home and she said, oh, Mom, I really met this really nice guy. He's with the FBI. I said, oh my God, Kristen, boy, what a line that is.
Right.
And, she said, no, Mom, no, here, look at his card. So I look at his card, and by God, it is an FBI card. I mean, or else it was a forged one that looked exactly
Sure.
like it. She meets with him again. Now they didn't date. They did not date. They only met. They meet twice. And she goes upstate New York. Now, there's back in, I can't remember what year exactly, but in the 80s, up in the upstate New York, they had a huge, big cocaine bust. I think the DEA was involved, the FBI, I think they called it Operation Snowflake or something. So this was going on up there. And I was told by a couple people that this FBI agent was involved with this operation. And I said to this person, you don't suppose it could have been the same guy that Kristen met in Minneapolis? I mean, it sounds absurd, but
Yeah.
So I have people go and find this guy. He's of course now retired, and they find him, and they connect with him with his wife. And the wife says, they asked, was he in the Minneapolis area in the FBI in 84 or 85? And she said, yes, that's where he started. What? I mean, we're like, I can't believe this. What are the chances that this FBI agent that's up there looking at all of the drug operations is the guy that was in Minneapolis here? So this, was just a red flag. And so I actually checked the legal counsel if this guy was here. And of course they said, no, there was no guy by that name here. And I'm not going to disclose this name now. But then what happens is they find where the guy is, and they do an interview for me. And they go to where his college, where he was at. And they ask if, where he is. And they happen to end up in an office where his wife was. Now, the wife says, they asked her, she said, oh, I'm his wife. He'll be home in a while. Here's our address, stop over at the house. So they said, okay, great. So they asked her, well, was he ever in Minneapolis in 84 or 85? And she said, yes, that's where he started. Now, coincidence? I don't think so. I don't think so. There's something here.
You think it's more than she just happened to meet a stranger or somebody that was connected to Vermeesh and had an argument, or and it didn't. There's no apparent sexual encounter, correct? No evidence of that.
No.
And obviously the manner of death and the fact that she's fully unclothed is also.
And she was almost decapitated.
Right.
So can this be a coincidence? It's hard for me to think that it could be a coincidence. So the guy comes home, and now the wife has already said that. The guy comes home, they're waiting there for him. They introduce themselves, and they said they're working on the O'Connell case. Is this, were you in Minneapolis, blah, 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 in 84 and 85? And what does he say? Oh, no, I was never there. And the wife said, well, yes, you were. And he says, Well, I was there, it was an internship. Well, I don't believe the FBI has internships. So this is, I mean, and we have mentioned this a couple of times to state police. Do they do anything? No. Do they question this? No. There's just so much over 35 years that we've compiled on this case. And you know, I get lip service almost. I mean, I'm not saying that every officer in the state police who has been involved with this case didn't do a good job. There are those that did work hard trying to solve the
Sure.
case. But the biggest issue that I have is every time they needed to go because we found this out or that out or go question somebody, if it was out of state, oh my God, no, we can't, you know, we don't have enough money. We're not funded. Como won't give us enough money. You know, how in the world are you supposed to solve cases? That's why state police have so many unsolved cases. If they can't spend 5 cents on their people to go an airfare to Florida or to the Carolinas or whatever, I mean, it was like pulling teeth to get them to do anything, you know, like that, because
Well,
they never have any money.
yeah, and that brings us to why we're even talking today. You know, Christopher Pavlik and his team and the others that are, you know, they want to take on your case. They want to even work either side by side with state police or look at it independently with the cold case team. Obviously, you're all in favor of that. But what's your feeling about the cold shoulder that he and that team are getting now from the DA, from the state police?
Well, listen, the current DA won't even call me back, has never called me back. I've left numerous messages. I never get a call back from him. Never. And that is a shame. He is the district attorney. He was an elected official. You would think he would call back the mother of her murdered daughter. No, I don't get any response from him. Now, you know, I mean, we've tried before to work with them. You know, in the beginning of the case, Kristen's underwear was sent to the police lab. I found out years later when they did a big probe on the police lab and found out that they were so incompetent that the guy that actually handled Kristen's evidence, his name was Vidor, and you can look it up, it's for publication out there. He actually didn't know how to run a microscope, and he complained how nobody was trained properly at the police lab. And I mean, he, you know, and then he ends up hanging in his garage that he committed suicide. Well, you know, I have doubts about that, but you know, who was to know?
Right.
But he consumed her underwear. In other words, they were not so, and you don't consume a piece of evidence. And he did work on her case. And I never, you know, it upset me to no extent when I found this out. And how I found it out, I called the IJA's office and I said, because in the newspaper, they listed all the counties this guy was involved with and all the cases, you know, were in the various counties.
Sure.
They never once mentioned Seneca County. And I said, wait a minute here. This is supposed to be a really bad county. I can't believe this guy never worked on anybody's evidence out of Seneca County. So I called the IGA's office and I said who I was, Mrs. O'Connell, and my daughter was murdered in upstate New York. And I said, you know, I said, did Vidar, was his name, I said, I didn't ask, did he do it? I said, I understand Vidar handled Kristen's evidence. And they said, yes, Mrs. O'Connell, he did. Well, I want to tell you, Seneca County was purposely left out of that group of counties in the state of New York. And they said, it was left out. And I know why it was left out, because they sure didn't want me calling and checking and finding this out. So
Right.
they actually purposely left it out. So I mean,
well, what's your appeal now? What is if you did get the DA on the phone, if you did get the lead state police investigator, and again, there's this fresh set of eyes and resources that wants to be involved in this case and try to exhaust any possible leads. What's your plea to the investigators about giving it the okay?
Well, I really would like to I'm an advocate for this, really, because I really want to see this go on throughout the states and in other cities. We have a lot of unsolved cases out there, and they just get shelved. If the case isn't solved after 2 years, and if you aren't constantly calling, it gets put on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have the manpower, they don't have the time. And if they do dedicate these guys to this case, they dedicate a man to it, he also has to stay up with every homicide that's going on, and he gets pulled off all the time. So, how many hours is he actually able to spend on it? And then they go back, and it takes 2 years to catch up to, what's going on. So I would like to be able to, you've got all these men that have dedicated their lives on the police force. They've gone out after, and they have to retire early, and they aren't done. I'm 81, for God's sake, and I don't think I'm done.
No, right.
And they're very bright, they're very experienced. Why not utilize these men? And if you ask any of them, they would say, oh, we'd love to work on cold cases,
mm-hmm.
and try to get them solved.
Yeah.
Why not establish that out there? Why not do that? Now, I do know there are states that do have cold case teams.
Mm-hmm.
And, and they're able to solve cases. It's awful. It's awful for a mother to not know who did this to her daughter. And you carry that all the time. And, I want justice for her. And not only her, I want justice for all those mothers out there who don't know what to do and who have their cases just shelved on the shelf. Why can't they establish this? Why won't they work together? Why can't they work with Pavlik and his team? He's put together a great team, and the other two men that will be working with them were with the FBI. They were with the FBI, and they were the top profilers, for God's sake, with the FBI.
Right.
But, they aren't good enough for the state police here. I mean, my God, where does arrogance get you? Nowhere. Let's start dealing from the heart and care about the people that we're supposed to protect and solve the cases. This is what is not happening. It's not happening. And why they won't work and with them, and I understand they won't deal with any labs that aren't licensed in the state of New York. Pavlik has a licensed lab in the state of New York that will do the testing, and that's what I want. I want what we've got tested through these people.
Sure.
because New York won't do it. They don't have the money to do the testing.
Hmm.